right, Moneyball family. I am excited today to have with me Mr. Brian Rolston. Brian Rolston had a pretty illustrious NHL career, playing over 1,200 games, scoring 340 goals, I think I read, maybe 342. Let's make sure we give you all of those. Over 400 assists, and it's a pleasure having you on today, man. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. Do want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Bella Pizza and also by Howie's Hockey Tape. So I wanted to represent both of those and give a shout out. Now, I did bring a special guest with us here today. Brian does not know about this guest yet, so it's going to be a very big surprise to him as well. And it also took probably all of the ink I had in my printer to bring this fellow along with us. However, we do have a guest, all right? And we're predominantly focusing right on this area here. So this is a former Brian Rolston. Tell me a little bit about what we got going on right here with this Fu Man.
I'm not sure. I don't know. A younger me, that's for sure.
Oh, I had to do
I
it.
think that might have been an Olympic photo.
I had to do it. I was scrolling through and, looking for photos for thumbnails, and I said, what is this? And that's going to go right here. That's a beaut, man.
I had it under my lip for a long time, but then I outgrew it.
That's a beaut. I'll tell you what, man, your name is synonymous. I've done a bunch of hockey interviews, even with guys like Rick Vive and Danny Gare and some of those guys. And, you have a very positive, I mean, and I don't mean this because you're sitting across from me on the show, but I've really never heard anybody say anything negative about Brian Rolston. And hockey, that's kind of rare, even with guys just razzing each other. You have a very good Buffalo background too. And I didn't know really where that came from. I know you were drafted in 91, 11th overall by the Devils. What is your Buffalo affiliation?
Well, I mean, I don't have much of a Buffalo affiliation, but I did. My draft was in Buffalo at the old Odd. I've been with the Little Caesars organization at post-retirement, and obviously Brian Johnson's there in Buffalo.
Yep.
Buffalo, and our kids competed against each other growing up. But other than that, there's not too much. There's not too much more.
Okay, well, you're very well known in the hockey circle, that's for sure. You're very involved with the kids there and doing a lot of coaching. You've been involved with the Little Caesars for a while?
Yeah, I've been with the Little Caesars program. Obviously, this all started kind of coaching your own son, and that 4 boys, and 2 of them play hockey.
Okay.
And I've gone through with both of them all the way through. So it was about 7-8 years of coaching, and kind of fell in this director's role of running the organization, and kind of just snowballed. And here I am running this organization. But it's a good organization. And I'm happy to be a part of it.
You obviously playing at your level and then having boys that played. And I saw, as far as where your boys were and they were drafted, and congratulations on all of that. Was it tough coaching your own kids, going through? And at what level did you start and what level did you stop?
Well, I think I started around the Pee Wee level and took them all the way through U16 or U18.
Okay.
My son Ryder, who now is in Milwaukee playing for the Admirals, I took him to his 15 year, and then he played for the development program. And my other son now, I took him all the way through to the Inks, and now plays in Victoria in the British Columbia Hockey League. But, coaching your kids, I think I was harder on my kids than I was on other players. I mean, some guys are like that. Some guys aren't like that. I've seen it over the years. We have a lot of NHL experience as coaches in our Little Caesars program. Chris Osgood's coaching, Jimmy Howard's coaching. So we have a lot of good people like that that come up with their sons, and they're retired, and now they're going to give back to the game a little bit. And that's basically what I wanted to do, is give back to the game and enjoy my time with the kids.
Of course. Yeah. And, with that, it is tough to coach your own kids. There's no question, regardless of sport. And I think, again, synonymous baseball, hockey, there's that daddy ball, right? Or daddy puck, I guess you could say in the case of hockey. My kid's getting more ice time than the next, and you're always kind of battling things like that. And I guess maybe trying to prove a little bit more. That's where I can see where you're saying that you were a little bit harder on your kids. Maybe they had to work a little bit harder for the ice time because dad was the coach, right?
No, absolutely. There wasn't any favoritism for sure, and obviously from my background and my experience, I know it's not getting any easier. You can't hand it to them. They got to learn from their mistakes and all the things that go wrong. And that's how you become the player you are.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's funny, well, it's not funny. Actually, I shouldn't say it's funny, but it's become such an elitist type game with the different levels of travel. with your double A, your triple A, your obviously I'm in Buffalo, so we're right up next to Canada like you are. So a lot of it is crossing the border and going over to Canada and playing a different level of competition. And I think what's kind of sad about, to a point with it now is if you say to someone, hey, my son plays hockey or my daughter plays hockey, and they say, oh, which travel league? And if you say for any second you say, oh no, it's just rec, it's just house hockey. It's almost like, oh, I'm sorry, you know what I'm saying? It's like there was a death in the family. It's like they're not allowed to do anything but play at this elite level, and with that comes a cost, and
No, absolutely, and it's very expensive to play hockey, and we try to make it as most affordable as we can. And with the Illich family backing us, they've done it since 1968. It's one of those things that we try to help the teams as much as we can, because we know how expensive it is for sure. And you're exactly right. And I was talking to one of the other parents, and they're telling me about their volleyball and how they travel. I mean, it's every sport. It's not just hockey. And obviously hockey's a lot more expensive because you're paying for ice and you're paying for equipment and your travel and everything like that. But it's every sport.
It is. Like, let's not get it twisted, right? Lacrosse, soccer, whatever it is. Again, there's no rec. Back when I was younger, even with baseball, say you were a phenomenal baseball player in the neighborhood and you played for one of the organizations. Well, if you made the All-Star game, you got your trophy, you made the All-Star game, great. Those were your accolades, Now it doesn't even exist that way. So I kind of just wanted your take and your spin on the current state of, youth hockey or youth sports for that matter. And I ask a lot of my guests that were ex-pros and things like that just to get their take on it. I personally have mixed reviews, and it could go a couple different ways. You just want your kid to have fun, right? You want your kid to have fun, learn the sport, hopefully fall in love with it like you did, and then take it from there. But it should never feel like a job. It should never feel like a task or a job where they're out on the ice 4 or 5 days a week. As I speak to you, my son's on his way to hockey practice, and his mom took him, but third or fourth practice this week. So, just get an idea with it. But I know you feel it. You kind of see where it is right now.
Yeah, it is. And as much as USA Hockey and everybody wants to say you need to be well-rounded in all sports.
Yeah.
It always comes back to the specialization, and it's probably not just hockey. And that's I never played in the summers, when I was growing up, and I never really let my kids play in the summer. But what's going on year round, whether it's getting to privates or you're going through and you're doing selects, and it gets overboard for sure. And you're exactly right. I mean, if my kids didn't love the sport, I'm good. I don't need to be around,
Yeah.
And they loved it. So I was ready to put my energy into it.
And I guess 2 of the 4 though. And I respect the fact, because that just goes back. Sorry to interrupt you, but it goes back to the fact, not all 4 played. And obviously you were okay with that. 2 of the 4 played.
That's right. I have one at Notre Dame that's in neuroscience, and I love it. Yeah. So he's a brainiac, and I have another son that's 13, and he's the last one at home. So it's nice to spend time with them.
What's the 13-year-old up to? Is he's not playing any sports, or just not into hockey?
Well, he likes hockey. I think he's going to be a GM someday. But he's a golfer, and my wife and I golf, so it works out well. We can go out and play with him, and so it's a great family sport. So it's good for dad and mom.
That's kind of cool too, because if it's empty nesting other than the 13-year-old, he can kind of tag along with you and do whatever you're doing. And golf's perfect for that.
And no, it is perfect. Once the boys go back to wherever they're going for hockey, we can still go and play golf and on our weekends. So, and that's kind of been nice too, because I stopped coaching. I'm just doing the director. So I'm not going to tournaments every weekend, so that's kind of nice.
You put your work in. Not only
I did.
Not only your playing career, but obviously, then after. How was it growing up for you? So, we're kind of talking about you and your children, or me and my children. How was it growing up for you, getting up, 5 a.m.s? Was it the typical hockey story for you, with your parents driving you in a minivan somewhere? How was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was no different than what AAA hockey is today. Traveling to Toronto and a lot of hockey. Like I said, I never played in the summers, but I played AAA hockey pretty much all the way up. My brother started kind of in a AA or A program, and my parents kind of slowly, and by the time I came around, I'm the youngest in the family. was straight to AAA. So,
Yeah.
I played all through in the Detroit area and played juniors in the Detroit area. Was drafted out of a junior league and was lucky enough to go on and play in the Olympics and play at Lake Superior State, where I won a national championship. So, and I loved it, that's a big part of it, because if you don't love it, at some point you're going to have to work, and you got to love it.
That's a great point.
Love that grind,
Yeah, man. It's you make a great point too. It's one of those oldest cliches in the world that you'll never work a day in your life if you truly love what you're doing. There's very few people that have that novelty, and but you've had such a cool career just based on what you had just said, so many different things. I think you played with 4 or 5 teams, most known, I think, with the Bruins, maybe because you were there and then back again, right? I'm 46 years old, so growing up, I watched Brian Rolston play, and I most recognize you with the Bruins, but I know there was a few teams in there, a couple really, really quality offensive seasons, more than a couple. And then, the ability to go and, like you said, play Olympics and do some other, is there anything that you didn't check off your list while you played?
I don't think so. I mean, my rookie year, we won the Stanley Cup, and it was a half season because it was a lockout year, and I didn't even play in all the playoff games. I think I played in half of them,
which is good for a rookie, man.
Yeah. So against Detroit, no less. But and I played in 3 Olympics and won a silver medal. I mean, I'm beyond thrilled. I mean, I physically, I'm in good shape. I didn't have that many bad injuries either. So, I'm very, very fortunate. And when you look back and you watch your kids go through it, and you watch, where kids end up, you watch kids where, oh, he made the minors, or, he's playing college hockey, or you really feel fortunate for what you were given a God-given talent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tell my 11-year-old who's playing the travel, I always say to him, God touched your arm. He came down, he touched your arm. This kid's got a wicked arm on it. It's better than an arm I ever had. And I say it to him all the time. And he truly, I don't think, appreciates it, because it's it's his dad telling him, right? And if it was, Brian Rolston telling him, or Brian Giunta telling him, or someone else, he would truly appreciate it more, But when it comes from dad, it doesn't quite mean as much. We have a visitor here again, so.
No, hey, buddy.
You know what? If he wasn't so dang cute, I'd be aggravated. But this is how my interviews roll, man. I like to keep them very cavalier and just.
Hey, listen, it's all good with me. I had 4 boys. I understand completely.
It's hey, Lincoln. I need you to make sure I'll bring you in the studio, but make sure you don't make any noise. So he creeps over. So he's not making any noise, right? He's just standing next to me. No, but
he's following the rules.
He's following the rules. It'd be tough to answer this, without making a few fans angry, but. Where was your favorite city to play?
You know what? I couldn't even say what my favorite city. I had such special things happen in every city. Boston was fantastic. I mean, and you look at back at your career and where it led to you next, and what if that didn't happen? And I mean, there's so many things. But I had my best years in Minnesota. I was into my 30s and had more man strength and had to be a leader on that team because they were a young team, right. Almost an expansion team. Yeah. So I had, and I had one of my kids there, and I had a kid in Boston. I had, in New Jersey, I spent 9 years. So I basically was on the East Coast my adult life, and got to play, get coached by Jacques Lemaire, who's just got the Ring of Honor there in New Jersey recently.
Legendary.
And he really, and most guys that play for him will tell you that he probably extended your career. Oh, and he definitely did with me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, certainly legendary. And it's funny reading, because, the way you just explained that, you had a little bit of a Benjamin Button type career there, right? Where it seemed like you were aging in reverse for a little while. When you went up and you were playing with Minnesota is when the slap shot became notorious, I think, right? And
that's right.
I love that story. Yeah, Sports Illustrated ranked your slap shot the 8th best ever. Arguably top 5, but listen, top 10 is a pretty good accolade, right?
I'll take it. Guys, I don't even think guys shoot slap shots now, but
it's wild, man. And you, of course, made it famous by coming in on penalty shots, and I think, did it almost start as a joke when you first did it?
Yeah, I think the first time was I got pulled down on a penalty kill and I was exhausted. So I was like, I'm just going to fire this. So, and I went in, and then it kind of snowballed from there. But that's funny. That happened in Minnesota. That's when that happened.
They need to bring it back. I would love to see somebody like, McDavid or even someone, like a Cal McCarr with a bigger shot just come in and do that. Because now, they're trying to do the Michigans and the flip between the legs, and it's a little different. But were you ever in any of the skills competitions with the slap shot?
You know what? I played in, because of the Olympic Games, I didn't play in that many All-Star games. I played in one All-Star game, and they didn't put me in this hardest shot.
Really?
I did some of the other skills, but they didn't put me in. But
Would they have you in the speed, the speed round or what?
I don't know what I think I did. I think we did breakaways, and we did you go around the cones, and
Yeah.
like a shuttle type of thing. But
I would have liked
great experience for sure. But I was like, you can't put me in that.
Right. Like to see you and Al McGinnis square off, man.
Boy, yeah, he could shoot it.
Yeah.
With a wood stick. He had a wood stick.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, now, these composite sticks and all the different, stuff they have going on. I was watching a little bit yesterday and watched Tage Thompson come up and skate from the blue line, and he ripped a 103-mile-an-hour shot effortlessly. It was just, it's amazing. But the strength and some things are a little different. What's lacking in today's game is the grit, and when I talk to the Danny Gares and the Craig Muni's, those guys, I love talking to those guys, and they share old stories with me and, about their coach coming in smoking a cigarette, and telling them they're just the greatest. Now, I think it's almost you have to really kind of watch how you're speaking to players, if that makes sense. You don't want to say the wrong thing or cross it up because of sensitivity, or, you're afraid this guy's not going to give it 100%. I feel the game has changed in that regard.
Yeah, and also they're making so much money, and it's not really about the money so much, but younger players are given the keys way earlier than when I started. Like I had to start on the fourth line and be a checker and kind of work my way up. And it's part of the cap too, because they want, let's sink or swim here.
Right.
And a lot of guys get the keys early, and then they're making 8 million, and all of a sudden, you're not telling me how to play. So
you're absolutely spot on. Yeah.
So, and some teams aren't quite there yet, so they have younger players that aren't mature enough yet. So when I really look back, and like I said, when I went to the Wild, Brent Burns, Mikko Koivu, they're all young first rounders, but they're not ready to win. They just, it takes time for those guys to become men and really understand how you win hockey games. You see some of their younger guys like Frank Nazar and those guys that are getting called up right away. And he was doing great in the American League too, because my son was there. But they don't have that time. And I remember when I came up, Lou Lamoriello, like there was no question. I don't care what you were, what round you were in, or if you're a first rounder and a high pick, you're going to the minors. Yeah. Right away.
See that?
And figure it out.
Right. There was no chance you were coming up and playing on the second line, with
exactly.
Yeah. And that's
maybe, how it's changed.
And maybe it's a money thing, right? Maybe it's, what are we getting back on our investment? Because like you had mentioned, when you're paying somebody $9 million a season, could change things.
And they can, if they can bring the young guys in, they can have them on their entry level deals too. So that keeps them in check for at least about 3 years. But I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Let's get into a couple of fun questions with you. How many fights? I mean, you weren't really known, for a big fighter.
Not many. Two
total?
Yep.
Really?
I wasn't a fighter. So early in my career, like in the 90s, it was mayhem. And I was on New Jersey Devils, where we had Danico, Stevens, Peluso, Randy McKay.
I remember those guys. Randy McKay was a favorite at one point, McKay.
If I got touched, it was going to be trouble. So I obviously didn't have to do it, but thank God. But it was a tough business, especially through the 90s. Obviously, it's not the same. Then the game changed. Then it went back to the speed game, and I think that helped me really to extend my career.
It did, for sure. I think a player like you then, and you were able to really showcase, what you had, right? And that's a good point. You may know a buddy of mine named Rob Ray, and Razor was somewhat notorious for getting out there and protecting others as well.
Scary individual.
What's crazy about Rob is, when I talked to him, and the first time I spoke with him and interviewed him, he wasn't a fighter. I mean, the guy, coming up and being drafted and playing hockey, he was a skill player. The guy led all his teams in goals and everything else. You get to that NHL level, and he said there was just so much speed around him. that he said it was a sink or swim. I need to do something to figure out how to stay on the team.
Yeah, how do I stay in? Well, that's a funny thing too. Like I remember even when I played, people would be like, whoever the fighter was on our team, I was like, he's really good.
Yeah,
You don't understand how good he is.
right.
He's a really good hockey player. You just don't understand that because he goes out and fights. But
100%.
those guys were all really good hockey players that were smart and could make plays. They just weren't as good as the top six, and you see that a lot with these teams, like even in the minors, because I watch my son in Milwaukee all the time, and you watch guys that are unreal down there, but they're not going to be top six.
Right.
They're not going to play top 6 minutes in the National League. So it's interesting to watch.
I love watching a good hockey fight, and when all the guys are banging the sticks on the bench, because it fires you up. Maybe you're down by 2 goals, and it just does something for you. Do you think that's lacking a little bit? Did they crack down too much on it?
I don't think so. I think there's still fights and things. And if you're a good enough player, I mean, look at Wilson in Washington. Like, you know how rare a player is like that is tough as hell, can fight anybody, and he's putting up points. I mean, there's maybe a handful of guys that can actually, what it does for your team is like over the top. And I played for some pretty tough teams, as I was saying, in New Jersey, but like the Boston Bruins, when I went back there at the end of my career, they really had an identity, and they were the big bad Bruins. And, with Chara there and Bergeron, which I played with Bergeron when he was 18.
Okay.
And then I went back when he was the captain of the team.
Okay.
And it was my last year.
Yeah.
And they had just won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to see the leadership dynamic in that dressing room. It was awesome.
I was gonna. So what did you think from that transformation from seeing him at 18 to then? Did you? Or let me ask you this: when he was 18, did you ever see it in him? Like, hey man, this kid's gonna be this leader.
Yeah, so I saw it at 18.
Wow.
He came in and he was, he was touched, and, he wasn't the greatest skater. He didn't have the best hands, just super smart. And I don't even know if there's another player that's ever played was like always in the best defensive position. He's like, you just don't find players like that. But
and you know what he was? He was pesky too. He was a pesky player. He was always where he was supposed to be, but where other teams dreaded him being, if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. That I went back there. That was the year after they won the cup, and I got traded at the deadline there. And we could have won the cup again that year, and we lost in game 7 to the Capitals. But those guys were so beat up, he had broken ribs, and when you go to the Stanley Cup, it's like war. And then the next year, for teams to repeat is pretty special, I would say.
And I don't care what anybody says. There's no tougher athletes than hockey players. What was it for you? Did you just know? Was it like, okay, I'm done, or was it like a family decision where you and the wife or family spoke about it?
Well, I hadn't played. Well, I got injured with the Island. I had gotten traded to the Islanders the beginning of that season, and I had some injury problems that year, but I wasn't playing very well. Like at 38, to stay in shape, and
you were 38.
The speed of the game was so fast.
Yeah.
And then when I went to Boston, I got new life, and I played really well there. And I would have probably played another year maybe, but, it was time. It was time. I was fortunate enough to play 17 years, and, and I can still walk away from the game. And so it was,
like you said, healthy, man. And heck, you don't owe the game a thing, man. You gave it your all. One of the grittiest players. I can say that with a very straight face. You were one of the grittiest players that I've ever seen play the game, Brian. And I mean that. And you didn't. You didn't allow, even from the point, you said you were in 2 fights, but I can tell you this: you never allowed anyone else to mess with your teammates either.
I mean, it's part of the program if you're there and you play as long as I played, and you learn throughout your career. Like I know when I went to, I was 30 years old and I went to Minnesota and I started winning more one-on-one battles. And it's just crazy how you learn throughout your career and to do different things to stay relevant. I always was like, there's no 18-year-old that's coming in here taking my job.
So last thing I'm going to ask you were in 2 fights. How'd you do? What's your record?
Well, the first one it was against Ken Klee in Washington, but wasn't much of a fight. It was more holding on. But the second one, I actually hit somebody from behind in Vancouver, and Burroughs, yeah, I knew it was coming.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I did fairly well. I may have gotten one in.
I'm
I was
excited.
actually pushing the ref, and he was like, "You can't push me, bud."
Yeah.
Now Brian Rolston is giving the linesman a little shove there.
Rolston, Shepard, and Gabrick playing together now. Here's Alex Burrows after Brian Rolston, because Rolston was all over Willie Mitchell.
Brian Rolston, he pushed Willie Mitchell from behind.
It's always great to hear hockey stories, and in my opinion, like I said, man, you're someone who kind of you know, if I could look and say, okay, I want to model a game after someone, and I mean this sincerely, man, you just, the way you played the game, like someone like Alex Ovechkin to me is just a legendary player, right? But if I'm gonna sit and look, and if I'm gonna be honest with myself and tell my son, you know, hey, I don't want you playing like Ovechkin. I mean, that guy's going to move from the red line to the blue line, and he's going to wait for the puck to come, and that's it, man. He's not forechecking. He's not doing much, and if you don't like it, too bad. I mean, I just got to, a couple weeks ago, he was in Buffalo, and I said, he's coming to Buffalo. I got to make sure I see, you know, Ovi, because it's Ovi.
Yeah.
And he needs, 20 more. And I was watching a power play, and you'll enjoy this. And I was there with my son, and I said, watch Obi the whole time. And the coaches, they made a change. 4 guys went off. He's not coming off the ice. No. He planted himself at the circle, right? Waited for the puck. And here's the thing. He demands the respect.
It's honestly incredible, like, that he's close to Gretzky. He's another one. I played against him at a young age, and he was awesome. Not only could he finish, but like, he makes plays. And when he was younger, could fly. And I appreciate you saying that about me. You know, I like I said, when I played for Jacques Lemaire, I learned how to play the defensive side of the game, and it really extended my career, you know, and that's part of it, being a well-rounded player, being able to play 200 feet. And that's part of why I played as long as I did.
Well, we enjoyed watching you, man. And, you know, it sounds like things are going well for you now. And like I said, I truly appreciate you. And thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Take care.
Impulse is revolutionizing the physical therapy experience for active individuals in Western New York. From marathon runners to warriors of the weight room, we've got you covered. Our cutting-edge technology takes sport-specific testing to the next level. Our patient-centered approach lets you drive your own recovery. You can expect individualized one-on-one sessions every time you're here. And the game changer? Impulse is home to Western New York's only public board-certified sports PT. If you're ready to get back in the game, call Impulse today and mention Moneyball for $100 off your first visit.